For some reason, it doesn't seem to want to handle that much data. So I'm not sure that's going to work. Paul's not here because he had a baby yesterday. Well, yes.
No. His wife had a baby.
It's his baby, too.
Yes.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
I'm going to send him one more invitation and see if that works. But in the meantime...
All right, that's weird.
But the sound is coming out through my computer and not through the... How about that? Hey, Paul, can you hear us? Doesn't look like it. Or maybe he's talking and I can't hear him. Can you hear me now?
We'll find out tonight. Yeah, there's a mute button on. Didn't know it.
He can totally hear us. I just can't get the sound out through the sound system. Your laptop turned all the way up?
I'll just echo everything he says.
So it's now in the headphone jack. Oh, you know, the sound was low on my... How about now?
How's that? I can... I think that is the most applause I've received in my life.
I'm going to see if there's any chance we can get video by... Hey, look at that!
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Paul Kemp.
Actually, I would prefer to you would refer to me as Paul Disembodied Head.
How about Max Headroom? Wow. All right, I'm also going to turn my computer, hopefully without breaking anything, so that you can see all the lovely people gathered here.
Yeah, that would be fun.
All right, there we are.
For one who assumes the worst will happen.
Keep that.
All right, welcome. Oh.
We should all make that face and just freeze.
I could do that for 2 hours easy.
I know you're Canadian. There's nothing else to do up there.
Oh no, there isn't. With your clothes.
My mother's Canadian. I can get away with that.
You know, it's like we live in the future, or like right on the edge of the future, and tomorrow it's going to be so awesome and it's going to work perfectly, but right now it's just out of reach. Wow.
You had him just for a second.
It was a glorious moment. I'm going to see whether, you know, some magic happens and Paul returns, but in the meantime, we should get started because you all have been waiting very patiently long enough. So, welcome to the Fate of the Forgotten Realms. Oh, you know, there was something else I wanted to do with this projector connection.
Come back in an hour.
No, this should work fine because it doesn't require the internet.
Right.
But first of all, let me introduce everybody who's up here in front of you. I'm James Wyatt, the moderator of this panel, creative manager for Dungeons & Dragons at Wizards of the Coast, blah, blah, blah. You don't care about me. Thank you. You guys want to introduce yourselves? That's better than me introducing you, because I'll say something silly.
Good, George.
You want to start at this end?
Sure.
Okay. All right, I'm Troy Denning. I wrote my first Forgotten Realms novel back in 1989 or something, when whenever Waterdeep was published, under the name Richard Allinson. And have written, I think they told me, or my sign said 13. I stopped writing them for a while, about 10 years ago, while I could concentrate on Star Wars. And about, I don't know, a year and a half ago, or when was it?
Almost 2 years.
It's 2 years.
Almost 2 years ago, Bob called me up and said, hey, would you come out and talk to WotC about some project that we're thinking of doing? And I said, well, yeah, for you, Bob, I'll do anything, and I'm always willing to talk. So I went out and talked, and we talked and did 3 days of brainstorming, and by the end of it, I was like, okay, how can I fit this into my schedule? How can I make this work? And that's kind of how I ended up involved in this, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. I can't tell you how much fun it is.
I'm Richard Lee Byers. I've done a number of Realms books, including Your Rogue Dragons trilogy, the Haunted Land trilogy, Brotherhood of the Griffin sequence, R.S. Salvatore's War of the Spider Queen, Book 1, Dissolution, and my next one will be The Reaver, the Sundering, Book 4.
I'm Erin Evans, the author of the third book in the Sundering series, The Adversary. I also wrote the Brimstone Angels books, Brimstone Angels and Brimstone Angels Lesser Evils.
My name is Ed Greenwood. I created the Forgotten Realms, so this is all my fault.
And I'm Bob Salvatore. I was lucky enough to put a book up at TSR that got me an audition to play in Ed's Playground, and I haven't left in many. Yeah, I've been writing in the realms for 26 years.
So I'm going to start with this fancy video, which I'm sure is going to work flawlessly.
This is our chance to do the realms in a really exciting way. When you have creative minds like Ed Greenwood, Bob Salvatore, Paul Kemp, Troy Denning, Richard Lee Byers, and Erin Evans, when you get people together and everyone kind of comes to the meeting with their ideas, stories we're going to explore, characters, it's really a catalyst. It's almost like you're refueling for the next year.
We do author summits to kind of draw on the experience and expertise of the authors, to let them feed us story ideas. But having all 6 of them in the room is just this incredible creative atmosphere and energy going around.
Getting together with all the creators who work on the realms in the Sundering project, we all riff off each other. In many cases, that helps you sharpen, bring into focus, fill in the details of something you want to present. In it to kill.
When you have an opportunity to get together with people that you've known for 30 years, like I have Ed and Bob, and sit down and have some fun designing a story with them, it brings a lot of joy to the room. And I think that joy carries over into the books.
I think what we're doing right now is a natural evolution of the world back to a place of innocence and freshness. You have to do something to cleanse it every 20 years, one way or the other, whether it's a plague or a war or a new conflict or a new enemy. And what we're doing with the Sundering is bigger, on a bigger scale.
Things are getting shaken up on a very high level. That the gods don't even entirely understand what's going to go down. And the stories are, how does that trickle down and affect people on the ground, the characters that you read about. It's not about the gods, it's about their worshippers.
It's going to evoke very powerfully the things that people love most about the realms, but at the same time it's going to be suspenseful and surprising. It's going to be everything you could possibly want in like a classic realm story.
It's a huge event that spreads chaos across the entire setting. There's widespread war, there's vying for power, and in power vacuum there's actual geographical changes. Magic is changing yet again. It's another of what fans tend to call realm-shaking events. Now, the idea this time is that it's the realm-shaking event to end all realm-shaking events.
The end result of all of this is stories that really get at the heart of what the realms is and express it more fully, more authentically, and frankly just freaking awesome stories.
This is our chance to actually bring the world to life, just to go back and bring out all that detail and that wonder and make it a place that you could really experience in a way that you've never been able to before.
My goal this year was to grab readers by the collar and say, it's not what you think.
We are going to be right in the thick of it in these books. Our characters don't know everything that's going on. They may be wrong about outcomes with the best will in the world. They can try and do something and it's not going to work that way.
It's as great and cool and exciting as it ever was. And I think it gives you the opportunity to reconnect with what makes it great.
We want to express the realms in a new way for a new generation of gamers so it's welcoming, and at the same time tell the older generations of gamers, you matter too. See, this is your realms back again.
All right, thank you all very much for coming. I beat you to it.
You beat me to it.
No more word from Paul. Dang it. All right, so that is a very brief introduction to the Sundering and the creative process that generated it, but I would like to ask our authors now to talk a little bit more. Feel free to discuss what is the Sundering and what is its significance as far as you're concerned.
I don't know. They told me not to talk about it.
Shouldn't have saved this panel for day 3.
Go ahead, this one's for you.
Oh, should I pick
You
off?
should start.
Okay. The Forgotten Realms is a living place. It has to live, grow, and change constantly, or it becomes static and dead. I accepted this years and years ago when I was writing it for myself in 1966 at the age of 6, before there was a D&D. So it was a comparatively easy thing for me to say yes when TSR wanted to buy the world to use it to be the home of the 2nd edition of Dungeons & Dragons back in 1986. The first stuff started coming out in 1987. And from the very first published stuff, the Realms has constantly been changing. And it's actually been a source of delight to me personally, because the one thing that your world cannot do when it's your world is surprise you. Because you put everything there. If you want to know what's around the next bend in the road, you go around the bend and you write what's there. You don't get surprised by what's lurking there. But the moment other creative hands are at work in the same world, you can get surprised. Sometimes favorably. But you get used to the fact it's a living, growing, changing world. And people do things in the world and create characters that you fall in love with that aren't yours. So, you know, there is Menzo Baranza, there is Drizzt, there is that horrible setting he's growing up in, and there's Farida. You know, it's things happen, and I go, wow, I could never have written this, and oh, this is happening in my world, and yay! And that to me is the heartblood of the Realms, is that it's alive and changing and moving and evolving, and we all get to write in it. And for me, this is like, I watch that video and I say, oh, can I have that video? Like for whenever I'm down, depressed, I can just watch that video and I'm back at those summits, and it's really cool. We were having fun, and they were bringing us food. And
we even played some D&D.
Yeah.
I am questioning the integrity of this stage. Quit bouncing.
Just a moment, I'll
Was
make
that
the
the only one that
necessary
felt that?
adjustments.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ed Greenwood.
Now, you see, usually he says, Ed?
Oh, I stopped doing that 20 years ago. I just gave up.
You see, you can wear him down.
Someone else?
Talk more? No, someone else should talk more.
So the last time we did,
Wait
last
a
year
minute.
at Gen Con.
What you said about the Sundering, I'm curious. Troy, you were away from the Realms for a long time. You tell us about the Sundering. How does it compare? Relate it back to like 1987, because you were there.
Well, I went away, and the Realms was a world of high fantasy where I would play all of the adventures where I wanted to, you know, have a heroic element and deal with what I kind of think of as heroic fantasy. You know, there's always going to be a really good guy in there. It's not like Dark Sun where everybody's just trying to like live until tomorrow. Not like Planescape where nobody knows what the heck's going on. You know, it was the place where things kind of made sense and where you really wanted to have that nobility and that rise, and where kings were kings and good kings, you know. And then when I came back to talk with people, it didn't seem that different, but it seemed like there'd been this other dimension brought in, and that was an interesting, fun aspect to see, but I don't know if I may be being too vague, but it was interesting, and there was this undertone and the darker aspect that had come in that I found a little bit surprising to me, and it was fun to kind of look at it and say, okay, now we're going to go back to, we're going to move it back toward this. I don't know if I'm doing a very good, I'm doing a terrible job.
I'm getting exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Anyway, there was this kind of like this dark undercurrent that hadn't been there, and that surprised me. I hadn't really kept careful track. I'd been reading a few things, but I hadn't realized how pervasive it had become. And I'm excited to see. I think what I found that was missing when I finally began to understand what had changed was the high fantasy, the heroic thing that I had loved was kind of taken a back seat to the darker edge that had become popular in fantasy at the time. And I guess that's what I missed, and what I'm really excited to help bring back is that high heroic feeling, and bring to the fore. I don't think it was, it's not that it was gone entirely, but I think it's nice to bring it back to the fore, and have a hero that I can really, one of my heroes is a hero that I can really consider a hero. You know, he's generally lawful good, probably the only lawful good character I've ever played or written, but.
So we've talked a little bit about the Sundering as a realm-shaking event, the realm-shaking event to end all realm-shaking events. It is a big event in the world. It's also a big event in our world in terms of the publishing world and a transmedia event. I wonder if each of you, perhaps in book order, and I'll stand in for Paul, will introduce the name of your book, and a little bit about how your characters fit in with the realm-shaking event that is going on. Bob?
Thank you. Name of my book is The Companions. It came out last week, I think, or it's out. It's the only one that's out so far. To me, the Sundering, not the Sundering per se, but the reversion, if you will, of the realms to a place of joy, of adventure and joy, began the day after, or the day of, a meeting at Gen Con about 7 years ago, when Ed and I were in the room and we were told about 4th edition and the 100-year jump and all of that. And when we walked out, we were like, okay, so, you know, where are we going to go from here? What's the long term for us? Because, you know, we have characters, and all of a sudden, they're going to be 100 years older. And so we began plotting, I think, right there in the hallway outside the room. And so for me, that's when it all began. And a couple of years ago, when James told me about the Sundering and what they were planning, I was nodding while he was telling me because we were expecting it. And I see this evolution in everything, in almost every game. You see it in every video game that's around for a while, right? The world keeps moving in one direction, getting more crowded, more defined. And every now and then, like I said in that video there, you have to cleanse it. You have to go back to the freshness of it. And one of the reasons why I asked Troy, you know, to come in, because he was away from it for so long, and then he comes back in and he sees it. And to me, this feels like 1987 again, where the Realms is finding that joy and that innocence amidst really, you know, chaos and darkness. And so, you know, where the mind fit in, the only thing I can say to that is my name is not Rukia. So there.
Awesome. So The Companions is out this month. Also out this month is an adventure for Dungeons & Dragons called Murder in Baldur's Gate. That is an adventure that ties into the events of the Sundering. It also ties into the events of the classic Baldur's Gate computer games, which is fun. Shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, it's an adventure for Dungeons & Dragons, and the actual print product has no statistics inside. All the game rule information you need is online in 3 different forms, as D&D 3.5, D&D 4th edition, and D&D Next. So it's a very flexible and versatile adventure. So then in October comes Paul Kemp's book. I'm so sad. Not that his book is coming out. Oh, in fact, he says, don't forget to tell everyone that The Godborn is awesome. The Godborn is Paul's book.
It is awesome.
And it is, in fact, awesome. I read it over Christmas break and stayed up really late 2 nights in a row to finish it because it was that good. That was last year. Wow. Paul's book involves some of his familiar characters in ways that I shouldn't probably say anything about.
See what I just went through?
Yeah, I do. So that's October, The Godborn, and it's awesome. Then in November is another adventure called Legacy of the Crystal Shard that takes place up in Icewind Dale. And just like Murder in Baldur's Gate, it ties into the events of the Sundering, and shoot. It's been a long 3 days. It also has statistics online for the 3 different game systems. That's what I was going to say. So let's move on to Erin.
My book, The Adversary, comes out in December. Features my character, Farida, who's a tiefling warlock. She makes a decision early on trying to protect people that she loves, feeling like she has to be the one to do the saving, and it gets her pulled into some kind of awful things that the Shadowvar are doing, and she has to figure out what it exactly is going on and how she can stop it, while her friends and family try to figure out how to help her. And I think for me, it fits into this idea of the Sundering. I like writing about heroes who are facing odds that are way, way, way above their pay grade. So they, she's not, the person who's going to take down Jade or something, but she's also not going to sit idly by and let bad things happen. And I think that's, to me, that feels like the heroes of the realms. These are people who they're going to get it together and do the right thing and protect their home and keep it, a place that you want to be.
Okay, my book is The Reaver. It's a book which, to my mind, is very much reflective of the kind of theme of rebirth and renewal, which is what the Sundering as a whole is about. And if that doesn't make you want to read it, let me also mention that it features pirates, red wizards, and undead, which to me is pretty much hitting a trifecta of swashbuckling, fantastic adventure. And I'm very proud of it, and I think you all are going to like it.
My book is The Sentinel, and it features a character who gets the inspiration to the title. He's a watchman in Marsimber, the most corrupt city in Cormyr, and he's honest. And that's a source of great frustration to him, as you can imagine. He's lawful good, wants to see everybody else be lawful good, and has dedicated his life to achieving that. And along comes the Sundering, and he finds himself embroiled with a noblewoman who thinks is the operative word, that she's the chosen of Seamorph, and gets swept up in some events that lead him into, in fact, earning the title of hero, I guess is the best way to put it. Oh, and Malik returns after 100 years of wandering the fugue playing.
I wondered if you're going to mention that. And the Sundering wraps up with the Herald. Being as the cover of the Herald has been visible in many places, including here for the last week, it's probably no spoiler to note that Elminster makes an appearance in the Herald. For those of you who have been reading the Sage of Shadowdale trilogy, my last 3 books, Elminster and Storm are both feeling very old, feeling very spent, feeling as if it's time to go. It's time to end their lives, but they both feel they can't do that without training replacements because, damn it, the bad guys can't win. So someone has to be there to take up the fight. And of course, whenever you have cunning plans of that sort, life crashes into them. And that's what happens in the Herald. What else can okay, let me say that there are certain places on the map of the realms, can I mention some of them, that might be visited in the course of the Herald?
Sure.
Okay. You're going to see Candlekeep.
In fact, the adventure we're running in Hall D, Confrontation in Candlekeep, sets up the events of the Herald.
Yes, and that's where the Herald begins, but it's not where the Herald ends. And you're going to see some long-time big wheels in the realms make an appearance on stage in front of you. They belch, they fart, they swear, they fall over themselves, as always happens in my books. And out of that will emerge heroes.
So in addition to the 6 books and the 2 adventures that I mentioned, The Sundering is also a comic series. Rich Baker has written a series that is going to be published by IDW, which tells the events of The Sundering through the eyes of other characters in other parts of the world. We have a digital game coming out later this year called Arena of War that ties into the events of The Sundering as well. So there are lots of changes happening in the world. Talking about realm-shaking events again. The thing is that the goal of this last realm-shaking event is to bring the world back to a sort of stable state that we can use as a platform for storytelling. Yes, there are still going to be big stories happening. Yes, there are still going to be important events happening. But our goal from this point is to keep the state of the world steadier, not kill any more gods or change the way magic works or make all the assassins go away except the fighter rogues who take money to kill people. But also one of the goals of the realms moving forward is that when there are big events happening, you are going to take part in them. And Murder in Baldur's Gate and Legacy of the Crystal Shard are a part of that, that as you play through these adventures, you can actually go and report your results, and we'll aggregate those results, and those will make a difference. Maybe a slight difference, but Baldur's Gate is a tumultuous place with a very fragile balance of power, and the events of that adventure are going to shift that balance of power. So, enough about that. So with all these big realms-changing events going on, what are the things that you all, and we don't have to go down the line, just in general, are most excited about in terms of changing the realms either back to more like the way it was or just changing it in general? What are the things that are going to make it easier for you to tell your stories? Come on, guys, wake up. It's
not giving away too much to say that the Pantheon is expanding again and changing again. One of the things that I was not a fan of for coming out of the spell plague was the diminished number of gods, because I always liked the cajillion gods of the realms, and that's being addressed, and I'm very pleased about that.
Ed, will you talk a little bit about our discussions about the gods in the Forgotten Realms and your original intent and how we ended up with where we're coming back? Do you remember what I'm talking about? So we had a conversation during our very first story summit about Ed's original vision for how gods would work in the realms, and he's nodding now, so maybe he can finish my sentence.
Okay, yes. Well, okay, there's 3 things here. When I originally designed the Pantheon of the Realms, this was in the days of first edition, and to get published in Dragon Magazine, everything had to match the existing rules. And I was trying consciously to have a balanced number of deities representing every alignment and every shade of alignment, so they would be totally balanced, which is why there's a huge number. The other reason there is a huge number is because back in those days, everybody both players and DMs read every issue of Dragon. Everybody knew all this stuff. So there was what we used to call Wheel Thursday and the Click-Clicks Fall Down Dead, because they'd read Dragon and they knew exactly how to defeat that monster. The mystery was being taken out of the game. The gods should be awe and wonder and mystery. And therefore, the other way to achieve that is to just overload you with information So when you're sitting at the gaming table with all the stuff you've photocopied and all the stuff you've handwritten and all the stuff you've gathered together in 15 tattered books, all together, oh, let me look that up. You can't keep track of what happens. So when you burst through the doors and there's an altar and there's people standing in front of it and the flames are shooting up and this voice is saying, I am the great and powerful Oz. And you can't keep track of the gods. You don't know what you're facing, so you have to gasp role play. That's number one. Number two, over the years, with the best will in the world, much of the written adventures and fiction had taken us into the living rooms and bathrooms of the gods. We'd seen them over and over again close up. They had lost their awe and wonder because they were becoming everyday. They were becoming like the Greek gods of legend, overblown, loud humans. That thrill of, oh my goodness, there's a rosy glow suffusing the entire room. Could this be Lathander? You know, that had completely gone, and I want it back again. I want the gods to be awesome and mysterious. And in my original realms, you never met the gods face to face. What you got as an individual was dream visions. You would have a vivid dream or nightmare in which you could see something and you were doing something and the god was talking to you, perhaps through a priest, perhaps through a white stag or a unicorn floating in midair in the middle of a glade, and you were just like, and you got the word. Or you went to a temple, you prayed, you made a sacrifice, and there was a manifestation like that rosy glow above the altar, and the priests in the temple were frightened and went to their knees and were weeping because the god was there. And you're saying, so should we go and attack that guy? Or is that a bad thing? And this cryptic reply would roll through your head and everybody would fall over unconscious. And then afterwards, you go back to your fellow adventurers and say, this is what the god said. What do you think it means? I want that flavor back, and let's do it.
I had those dreams the other night. Met Larry Elmore in the bar.
Other changes that are going to help you set this, tell your stories in the future?
Well, this is not necessarily an in-world thing, but the coming down to 6 books. I know that's really hard when you want to read as many as possible, but the nice thing is that it gives you enough space to really explore all the possible lore that you could be using there, to go and ask the experts and go to your editor and go to the RPG people and say, okay, well, I want to talk about this. What's everything I could possibly need to know? So this idea of sort of reknitting the continuity so that you get that feeling that this is a world that's gone on all this time. It's easier to create when you have everybody working together and you have the time to do all that work to make a story that feels completely in the realms, you know?
Wait, you're supposed to say we're supposed to do research?
We'll talk.
Yeah. One thing I have to add here, and you can see how hard it is for us to say things without giving things away, but I'm going to give something away.
The book's been out for a whole week already. People.
Yeah, but
Come
it's
on.
not in this book. It's in the next one. My next one. No. One of the things that I noticed happening, and it's not just in the realms, but it's in fantasy in general, is ambiguity. A lot of it. About races and, are orcs bad or are they good? And, Warcraft comes in and you got the Horde and everybody wants to play Horde because it's cool and all of that. And I think a lot of that crept in as well. And so, like, when I was writing the books about King O'Bould and that whole thing, it was always more of a question to me. I always had my characters asking the question, did we do the right thing in signing the treaty? They're orcs. And with the New Realms, or with the Sundering and the freshness we're bringing back to it, I called James up and I said, look, can I finally answer that question? Can we finally make a decision about this and eliminate some of the ambiguity? And he said, what do you want to do? And I told him, and he goes, do it. And that's something I like, that we're going back to this fresh flavor of this is the world, and not black and white. I'm not talking anything like that, where good and evil, like that clearly delineated. But the ground feels firmer under my feet again in the realms. It feels fresh again. It feels like we've got this tapestry that we're painting on, but we know what to expect around the next corner. Because I remember the day when all of a sudden they're like, Bob, how come there are no tieflings in your book? And I'm like, what's a tiefling? I thought a tiefling was a little sprite thing. You know, oh no, it's a half devil, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. And where are they? What do you mean? Oh, they're everywhere. They're in every city. And I said, why weren't they there before? And these are the kind of things that I think, as an author working in the realms, would kind of throw you off. It would kind of, put quicksand under your feet instead of a foundation. And the Sundering really allows us to put that foundation back, brick by brick. And that feels very good as an author.
I guess for me, it will be just that I'll have my high fantasy world to go and play in again. And writing is playing. It's like role-playing all by yourself, which, can be a lot of fun.
It has occurred to me as we've been talking that it's possible that not everyone was here last year at the What is the Sundering panel, and I'm not, like Bob, I'm not sure that we've done enough to kind of explain, set the stage. Are you guys confused?
Yes. I'm always confused.
I'm seeing some nodding heads.
Okay.
So,
do you know what's being sundered from what?
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah. So last year I gave a 10-minute sermon at the start of the What is the Sundering panel, and I'm not going to do that again. But fundamentally what we're doing, we're not rolling back the timeline. Everything keeps moving forward. The Sundering refers to the separation of Abir and Toril, which were smashed together and weirdly intermingled during the spell plague. They are once again being separated as Ao rewrites the Tablets of Fate and reestablishes them as a boundary between the worlds and as a definition of divinity, basically. So when the Sundering is complete, and I talked about this last year, so it can't be too spoilery unless you've all forgotten it. Well, when the Sundering is complete, there will be no more dead gods, which is to say there's a surge of life throughout the cosmos as gods that were gone and all but forgotten still kindle back to life and try to weave their way back into mortal existence. Murder in Baldur's Gate. And while that is going on, so there's this whole divine drama of the worlds being split apart, the pantheon being reshapen, and the gods trying to figure out what's going on, because it's not clear to them. They don't know. They know that Ao is going to rewrite the Tablets of Fate, but they don't know what that means. So the gods invest little bits of their power into lots of chosen, trying to do whatever it is that they think they need to do before the Tablets of Fate are rewritten. So the activities of the chosen are important in a lot of these books. Troy alluded to the noble woman who thinks she's a chosen.
Yeah.
But they're not like really, really powerful chosen. These are a child who leaves a trail of flowers behind him on the ground as he walks because he's invested with some of the power of Shantea, for example.
Because some of the gods think that the new tablets will set in stone the new regime. But they don't know how to get higher than they are now. So they're trying everything.
Yeah. So while that whole divine drama is going on, there's also a lot of political upheaval going on. We set the stage for some of that with the War of Everlasting Darkness encounter series at the end of 2012 that has problems erupting in the north. More problems are going to be erupting as a result of that. Which will directly impact several of the characters who are operating around that area. So that's kind of the big background picture. Does that help alleviate the confusion? Good.
It did for me.
Didn't you read my 25-page story guide?
I couldn't open the file.
Now he tells me. So that is the backdrop against which all of these individual stories are taking place. None of these books, or even these books as a whole, are telling the whole big cosmic story. They're telling the stories of individual people. And when I say books, I include the adventures and the comic books. Individual people trying to get by while all of this is going on. Oh, maybe I should have mentioned the Creo, too. You guys heard about the...
No.
All right, here's a wacky little question. And you guys all saw this coming. I told you in an email what I was going to do. So I noticed a while ago that I always write the same book. I had this crazy idea at one point. I wanted to write a story about a guy who had been a werewolf and got cured and having to deal with all the ramifications of that. And that idea just kind of noodled around in the back of my head. And then I realized that I had written 4 novels with pretty much that story of somebody trying to deal with the ramifications of bad things that they had done in the past. So that is a theme that is consistent in my writing. And I wonder, are you aware of themes within your writing, things that you keep touching back on and explore and are doing in your Sundering books, or not?
I feel like I end up writing a lot about what identity means. Are you the person that you look like on the outside that other people have decided you are the person you are when you interact with another individual, or are you the person that you feel like you are on the inside? And it comes up in a lot of different ways, but often I finish a book and I'm like, oh, that one was too, actually. Even if there's some other theme that happens in it, I feel like The Adversary has got a lot of thematic stuff around trust and what it means to be an ally and you know what you owe to your allies and things like that. But that identity theme, I'd say that was mine that kept coming up.
Well, the Reaver is set against this great cosmic event where, you know, the world is changing, and at first glance you might think, well, you know, the world's changing, all I can do is keep my head down and survive. But the story is very much about the fact that even when great cosmic forces are at play, individuals still have choices to make, and those choices are ultimately going to determine what the rest of their lives are going to be like and who they're going to be, which is a theme I've addressed in other stories.
I guess I'm always surprised by the themes that the readers find in the books after I've written them, and you know, I see what they have discovered. Because when I approach a book, I'm always approaching the book from what does it need to make the story work, what does it need to make this, you know, what kind of characters does it call for, and so I get very involved in the elements of the story, and theme is one of those things that for me emerges from what you're doing. It's not something that you plan. If I sit down and I say, okay, this story is going to be, this is going to be the theme of my story, it never ends up being that. You know, I'll write about 100 pages and realize I'm writing a completely different book than what I thought I was writing. And by the time I'm done with it, you know, I'm just concentrating on the story, the elements, the characters, trying to make all of that come to life as best I can. And when it's finished, somebody reads it and says, oh, I saw all these really cool themes, and I say, oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm somewhat in the same, I don't write for themes, but I know that being as the last bunch of novels have been about Elminster, inevitably, the things that he's facing at his time in life come up again and again because he's not resolving them because he can't resolve them, and a bit of him doesn't want to resolve them, but there are things like growing old, trying to find an end goal and an achievement in your life, being tempted by all the various things that you could do, and changing your priorities, and then being changed by what you see around you, because all of the chosen, and I speak now not of the chosen that are popping up everywhere during the Sundering, but I'm talking now of the chosen of Mystra, the ones who are still alive have seen all the friends they made, all the countries they lived in, and in some cases created and ruled, swept away, leaving them alone again. They're tired, they're lonely, they've seen everything, but there are all these new, young, vigorous people coming up past them, and they see many of them get killed in front of them and so on, and it goes over and over, on and on again. The grief builds up, but there's also always this new hope and life and energy around them, and sometimes they feel very jaded and left out, and sometimes they feel bitter, and sometimes they feel inspired. Yes, it all goes on again. Oh, it's all going to go on without me when I finally go. And that I've been dealing with in book after book, not because that's what I wanted to write about, but because if Elminster's on stage, center stage. That's the baggage he's carrying with him. And unless I want to write a completely unrealistic book in which Elminster steps out of character for an entire book for my plot purposes, which just wouldn't work for me because I don't write that way, those things are going to be front row and center. But that's not what I want the books to be about. Because, and this is a fight I have had with many an editor and not just with this publisher, I want my books to be about a broad tapestry of life and all these characters, not character X as the protagonist goes from A to B and goes along this linear little line. We do have to write outlines, but those are merely suggestions.
Bob, you were nodding when Troy was talking.
Yeah, because he was talking and I was... I don't like this question. No, we already talked about this, that I don't ever think of my books that way.
Yeah.
And then you told me some themes that were in my books, and I went, oh yeah, I guess they are. I think of my books as almost like talking to characters, and these are my friends, and just hearing their stories and going on with them. You know, I think there's one theme in them. If you think of Menzelberg and Zahn and the way it was created, I have 5 older sisters. So I think my childhood trauma has been... One thing I always try to do in the books, and is from the very beginning with Drizzt in particular, I have always kind of lived by the belief that the hero is the guy with the biggest heart, not the guy with the biggest sword. And I wanted a hero who actually tried to do the right thing all the time. Didn't always succeed, was often wrong, but he tried, because that's all you can do, right? And so I think the theme in the last few books is probably more about, when I was looking at Drizzt now, you know, 100 years has passed, and he's trying to let go of the nostalgia and move forward, and he's having a hard time with that. And in a way, I think it probably does mirror, you know, getting older in my life. And, you know, I still play softball because I just won't let the kids have their way, you know? I have to compete with them because I'm going to fight all the way to the grave, dang it. And so I guess that's one. But you had actually mentioned some about my books that I went, I guess that's right, and I had never thought of it, so. That's the best answer you're going to get from me. I'm sorry. Good. I just don't think of the books that way. To me, I'm talking to friends, and sometimes they disappoint me, but most of the time they don't.
Okay. So the video at the beginning talked a lot about our collaborative process in doing all of this. Most of that was actually shot during our third story summit, the one we did at the beginning of this year. We brought most of these folks out to Wizards twice and met here last year to talk story some more. How does that collaboration intersect with your own personal writing process? Is there a back and forth? What do you get out of working together?
You get the energy, you get the synergy, the bouncing ideas off each other. The energy level in the room goes up because you're not sitting alone at the keyboard. You sit alone, and there's the cursor blinking, blinking, blinking. It can outwait you, it can outlast you for hours. You have to make the first move because it's just content to go on blinking. And
you still use DOS?
I write on a Mac, I talk to it. And it says, yes, master. But, yes, my precious. Save the file. Yes, dear. No, it's great fun. But
sit down there.
But it is essentially a lonely process, the actual writing. It can be fun. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you're blazing away and you've written half the novel, and then you have to go up and make dinner. And other times you're working away and you're fighting to get through a single scene or whatever, and then you say, oh, the hell with it, and jump to some other part of the book and play around for a bit. But
when you're in a room full of people, you can bounce the ideas off each other. They riff off your ideas and give them back to you. Oh, twist it this way, twist it that way. Or, what? You see it that way? That won't work because, and which is great, because then you get somebody else's take on it. And you may think, oh, no, you're wrong. It can work this way. And then someone else will say, but nobody will know that by what's been printed thus far. And you go, oh. So what I think up here is not down on the page. So if I'm going to go there, I have to make sure the reader gets the explanation first without the stopping the plot to explain. Know, O Prince, that in the days before, when the heroes are falling off the castle wall and they're suspended in midair, you know, and you cut to the commercial and explain things, that's not going to be a good...
The stone of this castle wall is actually fascinating.
Yes. So, I mean, yeah, it's great. And to get together, it is... And as I said earlier, just to look at that video again brings that all back. And it's like, hey, I want to be there. God, this company's worth millions. Can't they just like house me and feed me and have us all there all the time? Wouldn't it be cool?
When you guys were talking to us about, you know, how do we get the feeling back? How do we? And one of the things that I and Ed and I both mentioned was that back in the old Milwaukee Gen Cons, we used to have panels, and Troy will remember this very well. And we had the authors up there. And we just started riffing. Mm-hmm. And it was, you know, it was Troy and Doug Niles and Elaine Cunningham, me, Ed, Jim Lowther, Jeff Grubb was there, and we just started playing off each other. And as an author who lives, you know, at that, you know, 2,000 miles at that time away from Lake Geneva, I wasn't working at TSR, and I'm 3,000 miles from Wizards of the Coast, right? We're on opposite coasts, and when you're in the room and you hear that, what you're really getting is you're getting a sense for where the other authors are taking their parts of the realms. And that helps you so much in what you're doing because you're seeing so much flavor that should spill over into your books. Maybe not the characters spilling over or whatever, but if I'm writing my book and I'm in Baldur's Gate, for example, and Ed's writing a book about something big happening in Waterdeep, just being able to find that Easter egg out of what he's doing. And I think that was lost for a long time among us. I really do, where we almost became isolated in our works instead of all getting together. And those summits, I think everyone here will agree with what Ed said. For me, when I got home from that first summit in particular, I was like dancing. I was like ready to go. I couldn't stop typing. You build on energy of the people around you. And, you know, to see... And what really got me at the first summit was when Troy and Ed you could see they fell back to 1988 or 87. And they were right back there arguing about, or I'll even say 86, they were right back there arguing about what should go in the gray box. Right? Yeah. I mean, that's what they were doing. And you were giggling like a schoolgirl up at the whiteboard. James is trying to, like, condense all the notes as we're talking, and he's up there, I know, this is, oh, can we do it this way? Oh, this is awesome. And it just became infectious. Yeah. And it's hard. I mentioned this in my other panel the other day. If you're sitting in a room making music on a Mac with, you know, Music for Dummies or whatever program you're using, that's great, and you can do some really good stuff. But when you're in a studio with other musicians and you're playing off their energy, that's when you go to the next level. That's when you are pushed to be the very best in every note you play, because they are, and they're driving you. And I mentioned the other day, and I'll say it again, if you ever get the chance to see a movie called It Might Get Loud, you've got Jack White, Jimmy Page, and The Edge sitting in a room playing guitar. And, you know, three guys sitting around playing guitar. And by the time it's done, you're hearing music that's coming out of these guitars that is like, how did they do that? And I think the same thing happened. And I know I felt that way when I left that meeting.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's inspiring enough to me for a project. Well, you know, Ed's also doing a book, Bob's also doing a book, Erin's doing a book, Troy's doing a book. But to actually be in the room and hear, you know, what book Bob is going to do, what his ideas are, and see how excited he is about it. It's like, damn, that's going to be awesome. I better do something pretty damn good, too.
Yeah. And then when you were doing that with your book, when you were saying what you wanted to do, remember I said, can I steal this one town for a spider? And can I go over there because sounds really good? And that's the way it happens.
Yeah, it's so hard sitting here because at the last summit,
Bob told us what's going in the next 4 books. And it's so hard to keep my mouth shut, you know. No.
Oh, no. You mean my next 4 books?
In your next 4 books.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, yes, yes. And I can't wait for that to come. And I have to keep my mouth shut because it's going to be so much better if I wait.
Do any of you have the new Menzo Berenzan book that just came out? Was it last summer? You never tell me these. How come I don't have one? See what they do? No, I have a PDF. I have a PDF. That's all I have. All right, well, anyway, if you've got that book, it will be outdated soon. That's almost.
Is it talking about what Menzo Berenzan is?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Well, the beauty of that book is that battery low. The beauty of that book is that we actually intended it to be playable in any era, so it won't have the most up-to-date information, but lots of it will still be useful.
Yes. It's useful to me. I have it on my desktop, and I just keep opening up to see which house can I attack now.
There was a mention of Easter eggs. There are more.
Yes, there are some.
Yes. Wait, is that something
Yes.
you could be telling, or?
And Christmas candies.
You might
Yeah.
talk about just the fact that there's a character in common among.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, like, for example, in The Adversary, Frida's taken to this place. This seems like it might be a war camp, it might be a village. It's kind of strange, but there's a character in there, a little boy named Stead, that I got to borrow, who is actually a character in Richard's book.
Quite a major character.
Yeah, which is really, really, really nerve-wracking when you have to write someone else's character. So I think I sent you several scenes. It's like, is this how he'd sound? Is this exactly how the dialogue would go? But yeah, you try to find places and points where they connect. You get Troy's character knows one of my characters at one point, and I appreciated the way too. I mean, I think that doing that Easter egg stuff it can be really just easy to do, but taking the time to do it well so it feels organic, so it's not just like, hey, by the way, there's another book. It feels like the whole world is kind of knit together. I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I created kind of a master smuggler character that works around the Sea of Fallen Stars that you found a bit part for, I believe.
Yeah, he plays a fairly important role without taking over any. He's not a scene stealer, but he's kind of crucial to the adventure.
Yeah, so that stuff is fun as you see it run through.
And because I was writing the wrap-up book, I wanted to make sure, and I'm still waiting, as we check through the editing, if there's anything that needs to be said before the end of the series, my book is the last chance to say it. So, if there's anything that, any boxes that need to be checked, references. But when I was plotting it, I was going back and forth with Fleetwood, who was editing the book, and I wanted to put everybody in. You go through the old gray box and you tell us what everybody's doing. Meanwhile, he was getting out of the bath and had every character, and Fleetwood's going, you can't do this, Ed. You can't have a cast of 120,000. I said, why not? It's called The Forgotten Realms. And he said, you can't have them between the covers of your book. We need to tell the story of a fewer number of people than 120,000, so it was who we left out. But still, to write it, I have to know what all those touchstone characters were doing in my head. Whether it makes it into the final book or not, I have to know. So when the book comes out in June next year, I will be ready at Gen Con next year for you all to come up and ask what your favorite character was doing during the events of the Herring. I will tell you. You may not want to hear it, but I will tell you.
It's a different kind of Easter egg, I guess, or I don't know if Easter egg is the right term, but in addition to having a couple characters that appear in other books in the series, I also utilize some characters from older supplements that you haven't seen or heard of for a while. And then if you're a real Realms fan and have read many of the older regional books and stuff like that, oh, that guy.
So I have one last question before we get to good questions, which is, what are you looking forward to? What are you excited about in terms of the future of the Realms?
How can we answer that without spoilers? I'm looking forward to and
You need like a buzzer, and every time we cross the line.
Not necessarily about your book, but about
Okay.
like, what are your hopes for the future of the realms? What would you like to see off in the distance?
TV series. We call it the Game of Forgotten Thrones. Blockbuster movies, bendable action figures, hand puppets, lunch buckets.
Stop.
New York Times bestsellers. And I would like to see a Realms novel line that is about, I don't know, 20 novels big each year. But I want the entire adult and children reading population of North America buying each one so that we can afford to have that many novels a year. I want everybody to live Realms all the time. I want to be in your fridge.
I want Creo.
Your wishes are commanded. Incidentally, New York Times bestseller. Anything else?
I mean, I've always thought of the Realms as this incredibly rich, fascinating setting that is big enough to hold many different kinds of fantasy adventure stories, kind of, told in many different, like the real high adventure, high fantasy stuff. Some of the stuff is a little darker. The sword and sorcery is a little darker, edgier sword and sorcery. If you read my stuff, I kind of like that. I think there is room for that too. I think we can have some of those. And I'll write them. That's what I want to see going forward. That kind of the richness and the diversity of the world. For my stuff going forward, I'm setting stuff up in the Reaver to move forward with. That I mean, if I don't want to spoil anything, but if you've read my previous Realms books, like certain areas, certain issues that I've looked at in the past, I'm going to continue. I'm going to take those to the next phase and show you what happened next. And I've also been told that in due course we will be getting back to my mercenary company, Brotherhood of the Griffin, also. So those of you who like them, we will see more of them by and by.
And just giving a little spoiler on Ed's book, I'm looking forward to when they find Chewbacca alive in Candlekeep. And the Star Wars fans will leave me alone.
That was the best sex scene I ever
James, you awful person, you.
All right, how about your questions?
With a broken mic.
So you're going to have to speak up and we're going to have to repeat questions. Okay.
You really didn't answer it, but, well, you kind of did, but is there going to be any, like any of Bob's characters in, maybe making a cameo appearance in any of the other books, or is it, you know what I'm saying? Like, or maybe Elminster going to be appearing in some of the other, you know what I'm saying? To kind of, there's a continuity there, or is it going to be enough, is the story going to be enough that we realize what's going on?
You guys want to address that?
I think the story is going to be enough. I mean, just speaking for myself, I know that the things that happen in Bob's book to the world and the things that happen in Paul's book have a major effect on what the state of affairs is at the beginning of mine and how, certain powers react and move on from that. There's not like Elminster doesn't show up and say, "Hey guys," but there's, not that Ed didn't try to convince me. That would be awesome. But I don't think I ever want to put Farida. I don't want to put Farida in the room with Elminster. Something bad's gonna happen.
Oh, I do.
Do you like the smell of burning beard?
Worth it for the devil.
We're back to Wookiees.
So I I think that's the bigger. I think the way to look at it is you have this huge, big, high-level thing happening, and as far as the novels, you have sort of 6 windows into it, and they, you know, the world is changing, and those changes do affect the next story. And while the same characters aren't running through all the scenes.
It's not the Avengers.
Right.
Yeah, think of it like we're writing books about World War II or something, right? And I'm doing the Blitz, and you know, Ed's doing North Africa, and Erin's doing the Holocaust, and so are there some characters or here or there that may show up in different books? Probably, but particularly the feature characters, no. And like for me, I'm just rolling forward from the companions with my characters. My next book comes out in March of next year, Night of the Hunter. It's already done, and I'm working on the book for next August. So like I'm rolling forward with my story, you know, through the Sundering and post-Sundering, if you will. And I'm sure that everyone else is hoping to do the same, if they're not already there, because mine, like I said, mine's already out, so I have to keep working. Yes?
Question there? Sort of a technical question. Timelines mean a lot, especially when you're trying to sort of the end something. And so sort of my question is in 2 parts. One, how long of a period of time from sort of the start of the Sundering to the end of the Sundering, the years that we're sort of talking about? And then with the goal of allowing people to just sort of run games from the conclusion of the Sundering, can we expect that there aren't going to be any big time jumps going on for a little while?
There better not be. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
That's like, that hurt. Just from a creative point of view, I mean, it forces you into places that can be very good, but no, please don't do that. My book takes place, well, the last Threshold really was designed to catch me up. The Companions takes place, it begins before the Sundering, but leads up to around 1484.
Ed, do you remember the years for your book? And the year?
Is it 1487?
I think it's 1487, yeah.
That sounds right, because I think mine's
Yeah.
1486. So.
Yeah. Which would...
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It would be around there, yeah.
Mine's 1492.
Troy's in the ocean. One thing, and I think James should talk about this a little bit. When we were sitting down, and I think that everyone here had the same experience, and we were going over events, and we were saying, well, let's do, you know, in my book, we're going to do this in this year. And so you'd name the year, and then somebody else would go up and they'd look up the year. Do you remember this? Can you talk to that a little bit? It was really weird.
It was a little creepy. Bob's book ends in the year of the awakened sleepers, purely by coincidence, which may or may not have any relevance to his story. Shoot, I'm experiencing technical difficulties.
You should see your doctor.
Remember that though, when we were sitting in the room and
Yeah.
let's do this year, and this is the year of and we all just sit there and go, whoa. What was that calendar written? And it's like, we put that together in like 1991 or some silly thing, and we're all sitting there, and all the year names are making perfect sense for what we're doing, and we're like, okay, this is like creeping me out.
Yeah. And some of those year names I get in like 1979.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
Because I was thinking ahead, not to this, but I was thinking ahead that there would be tumultuous events. But it was freaky how they fit in with what we were talking about.
You're Nostradamus.
But wait, there's more!
The other thing I was going to say about that question is that despite the coincidence in real-world timing, the Sundering is not about converting the realms to 5th edition, if there were such a thing, to a new rule set.
And we're not saying there is or
There's a song there. So it's not about keeping the realms in line with changes in the rules of the game. We're done with that. That's why we kill all the assassins. Really?
Not all of them.
All the characters with the assassin class.
That's easy to change.
So when you set your games, it is not really an issue. dragon with his head.
Yell.
Do you find the new rules coming out from like D&D Next influence the way that you think about writing books, or hope you would do aspects of not necessarily combat or flavor or fluff or anything that you didn't necessarily have with some previous editions?
Nope.
No, not really. I mean, that's, I think my general impression of how D&D Magic works and what the Realms is been formed by pretty much, significantly earlier material than anything you're seeing now when you get right down to it. And when I sit down and write a scene with a wizard just throwing spells, it's basically, I've learned that trying to keep up with all the minute changes in the rules is kind of a mug's game, because your stuff's going to be outdated eventually anyway. Well, I'm sure D&D Next is the last, but till now, it's, so I mean, it's just, if it feels like D&D and it feels like the Realms to me, I roll with it.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think the nice thing too is that there have been times where they've come and said, you use this element a lot. What is it that you need to stay true? Because we don't want to come to you and say, okay, all of a sudden ritual magic works like this, and your character who relies on ritual magic and that's like his whole thing, suddenly you're going to have to write into your story how he suddenly changed and lost his, reason for being and all of this stuff. So how do we work with these things together so that you don't turn the story into explaining the rule changes? So that you get to tell a story that's good and engaging and feels like D&D without feeling like a way to sell you on something different about the mechanics. Because, like you said, you should be able to use which mechanic you want.
The way I always think about it is that the Forgotten Realms is the world, and whatever rules system you're using to play D&D is just an interface, a user interface to that world. And the world doesn't need to change if the user interface changes.
and I'll tell you, it can get crazy when you've been doing a series as long as Ed or I have been doing one. When you get letters from, like I got a letter from a guy screaming at me because Dritz and Wolfgar were CR 17 and the White Dragon was CR 25. How could they possibly beat him in the Crystal Shard? And I said that book was written in first edition AD&D. Yeah, so, and he was really mad at me. And he's like, well, so, and I said, so go look at a first edition monster manual and you will see that white dragons are pretty wimpy. But no, I go along with what everyone said, that you don't want to hear the dice rolling in the background when you're writing a book. And I get into some very detailed battle scenes anyway, and I'm sure that my characters are doing things that you can't do anyway, so. But actually I did, in one of the Neverwinter books, I wrote an anatomically correct 4th edition battle. And I had stacks of cards for everybody involved in it. I figured out what level they were and everything, and I did this one scene where I think it was Barabbas and Ephron in the woods fighting against some zealots that were coming against them, and I was doing all the exact powers and what he uses daily now and all of this, and I wrote this, and it took me like 5 days to write the damn scene, and when I got done I was just like, I am never doing that again. I liked the end result, but it was like, I'm never doing that again. So I'm just going to go back to one dwarf grabbing the other dwarf by the ankles and swinging them around.
Actually, this brings up a Inner Secrets of TSR design story from the Mists of Time. My novel, Spellfire. No, I'm not going to go into the long, sad story, but at one point...
I've heard that story.
Yes. At one point, I had an editor who said, oh yes, every time anyone casts a spell, describe it fully, all their gestures, how they get out the material components, and give us, and we'll put it in italics and treat it like verse and put it down the center of the page, the exact incantation that they utter. So I did this for every spell in the book. The gaming guys were having orgasms. any DM could read out, you know, it's fireball time. Okay, you do this, you pull out this pinch of saltpeter, you do this, and you go, by tongue of bat and sulphurous reek and the mystic words I now do speak, where I wish to play my game, let empty yours birth into flame! And then there's your spout. Yeah, and they could use that every time. But the fiction guys were going, do you know how slow and plodding this is? You have fights where 6 guys hurl spells, and it takes 13, 14 pages. And the pacing just goes, and at that time, bullet time hadn't been invented. So they weren't going to let me do all my fights in bullet time, particularly as the grunts in the fight, who all they were doing was throwing knives and then drawing their swords and sprinting across the chamber, were going to be like this for 6 pages. Yeah, exactly. And as a writer, by the end of that 6 pages, I wanted to drop the banana peel in front of them, open the window, and let them sail through, because I needed the release. So after I did the first little bit, they just ripped those out and said, never ever do that again. I said, oh, thank God. And then the games guys took these little spell descriptions and took them home.
I'm sure we still have them somewhere.
Somewhere, yes. Oh yes, I can give you all the incantations if you don't stop me.
Stop them.
Yeah, really, you want to stop me.
First of all, thank you guys for all you do. It's amazing, just the ability you guys have when you put down on paper for us to enjoy out in the real world. As much as I would love to live in the realms, as you said, Mr. Greenwood, do you guys ever wonder if, when you guys tied this so well together as a huge collaborative team, that people may be able to miss major parts because they just don't have an opportunity to keep up with all this whole stack of books that are coming out? You know, you're 3 books ahead of me, trying so hard.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I got them. Great.
No, I don't worry about that at all, because it's a journey and everybody's going to go at their own pace, or choose to go or not to go. I mean, one of the things that became abundantly clear to me several years ago with a book signing is that when I have a new book come out, you know, at a book signing, if people were coming up with their books that they wanted me to sign that they were currently reading, it would be 10 different books because they're way behind or whatever. But no, I don't worry about that at all. Everybody's on their own path and they'll find their own way. And, you know, for me, with something like 35 Realms books now or some silly thing, it's also one of the reasons why I did the books the way I did them personally, and that is you can pick up any Dark Elf book and read it and get a beginning, a middle, and an end of a story. I purposely structured the books more like James Bond or Sherlock Holmes than Wheel of Time. You can't pick up the 5th book in Wheel of Time and read it. And if you pick up the 3rd book and say A Song of Ice and Fire, you're going to wonder who all these dead characters they're talking about are. So I purposely did it that way, because one of the things that I know is true about this genre in particular is that people slip in and out of it all the time. You know, you're going off in the military and you become the gigantic fantasy reader while you're sitting overseas. It happens all the time. But then you get home and you've got a family now and you get a new full-time job and whatever, and you kind of fall out of it. So you should be able to come back in seamlessly.
Yeah, I echo everything Bob said, with the caveat, the thing that frustrates me is when books go out of print, or they're only in one format, or they're exclusive to Gen Con or anything like that, and you can't get your hands on them. Yeah. And I think that's not fair to readers who don't, because a part of the story is denied them. Yeah. So if there was a way of print, whether it's an ebook only, okay, make it print on demand later on, because no Realms reader who's going on at their own pace should ever encounter, oh, that's been out of print for years, you can't get that. Well, why the hell not? Company's still in business publishing stuff. Make it so. You know, that's the one caveat. I want people to be able to read. And the other thing is, there are always books that are right for you at a different time in your life. We've all read books in school that we went, ugh, why the heck was that even on the course? It's terrible. And if we come back to that same book 10, 15, 20 years later in our life, we go, hey, this is a great book. I don't know why I never, because we weren't ready for it then. You know, there's a reason you come to books at a different time.
Absolutely.
And there are books that speak to you about, because of what's happening in your own life, far more powerfully. I mean, if you're a lonely outcast, Homeland is going to hit you like a ton of bricks. It's going to become your touchstone. If you're not, it's going to mean something completely different to you. If you're lonely, the sort of buddy books where this group of adventurers gets together and does something cool together is going to mean so much more.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can read them chronologically, but you can read them chronologically only afterwards looking back, because they weren't published chronologically.
And then there are books you get in school and you go, ugh, and then you read them when you're older and you go, ugh. Ethan Fromm, I'm looking right at you. I actually, just to pick up on that now, I'm saying this for James's benefit. I heard a really curious thing with this whole print-on-demand thing. I was over in France, and the French publisher told me that they publish books, you know, the books go into paperback, but you can still get them in hardcover if you want them. It's just pretty expensive, but they'll go and print it. So they take orders and they print them in hardcover for the people that want the hardcover. And I thought that was really interesting, and maybe that's where it's going, that it'll be, I want a paperback. You know, the book's been out for 5 years, it's only in paperback, but I want a hardcover. Here, you know? I can see that happening.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Take them.
You guys talked about like the really positive aspects of the collaboration that you all got to do and just all the fun. Were there any ideas that any of you guys had that you thought would be really, really cool but just didn't quite fit into, you know, how everyone else was thinking? Like, where anytime you collaborate with things, you're always going to have to make those sacrifices to fit with your own mind.
No, everything worked perfectly.
But I don't think the Realms is set up that way. I mean, maybe in the meta stories or whatever, but you're in your own region, you got your own characters, and you beat them up the way you see best suits your story, right?
You know, I think there were a couple of times where we would toss out an idea and say, what if we do this? And somebody would say, oh, that won't work because of this, but maybe we can work like this. But that stuff happened so quickly that you almost can't remember it. Yeah. I don't recall any protracted discussions, and maybe it's just because I have a bad memory, where we actually discussed an idea for 15 or 20 minutes and decided not to use it, or you know, it always seemed to morph into something that would be usable. And am I remembering that right?
No, you got it dead right, yeah.
It seems to me that if an idea kind of went by the wayside, it was more an idea where we were just discussing kind of what the Sundering in general was going to be. I think when it came down to the level of talking about, okay, what I want to do in my story, I don't recall any.
There was a little bit of coordination, you know. If similar ideas occurred, well, we probably shouldn't do that in both places. A couple of things like that.
Right.
But generally, well, you know, you have to, when somebody's talking about what they're going to do in their book, the rest of us would kind of step back and listen and look for places where we could offer a suggestion or a cool twist or something, right, or coordinate with it or something along those lines. But you pretty much, once the groundwork is established and the foundation laid, then we would not say, oh, no, you shouldn't write that book. You know, you'd get something thrown at you.
It went the way you said more often than not, because like right in the middle of, as I was plotting, because I was doing the first book, so I really had to come up, I wanted to come up with something very concrete that I was going to present as the first book. Even though they weren't building on my book, because they were doing their own books, just to show them where I was going, because I had to go first. But I was also thinking of ahead of what's going to be the book that's going to come out in March 2014 and August 2014 and March 2015 and all of that. And when I was doing that, as I was going forward, all of a sudden, as I'm saying, you know, I'm kind of thinking I might want to go here and do this. And then Troy would say, well, you know, this is going on. And Richard would say, well, if this happens. And Erin would say, you know, and so I'm sitting there and now I'm getting all these things being fed back to me. And that's what I talked about, where the richness of the realms, when you know what the other people are doing in the area. So my thoughts became more crystallized, but the process was not a reduction. We can't do that. It was an addition. We can do it even better if we go this way. For me, almost the whole way through both of those summits that I was at.
How was the book order chosen for author? Like, so Bob was first and Ed's last. Was there draw straws or?
We actually worked that out at the summit. I remember writing stuff up on the board. Yeah,
That was the one I wasn't at, because I was like, I have no idea. They just said, you're book 3. And I said, cool.
It may have been partly a matter of what made sense. You know, like Paul had an idea of the kind of book he wanted to write, and that fit where we were going to be doing that particular thing with the world. In my case, it was a lot of schedule. I was working on something else and couldn't start it until, I would be pretty late in the series. So.
Yeah, I think mine was going to be the most cryptic of the books in terms of the Sundering and what was going on. So it made sense for me. Plus, I had other books coming out. I had, books coming out where I could kind of preface my own book a little bit, and the comic series that I was doing where I could preface my own book. So it made sense for me to get this book out there first, I think. And I really think that the one decision that was made by everybody was we really wanted Ed to go last and tie it all up. Because I think we all agreed from the very beginning that one of the most important things of making the Sundering work for the people who play and live and read in the world is getting back to the vision of Ed Greenwood. So he should go last.
Maybe be more of a spoilers question, more curiosity. Through all the books, I know we're going to see all the characters themselves, how they train everybody. But we just go from the God's point of view. To some extent, just to see what their turmoil, what's going on is happening. Just so we understand.
That'll probably depend on the author. Some authors are more comfortable with using gods than others.
You'll see a little on-stage God stuff in mine.
I think for the most part the gods are sort of there and they're sort of nudging their followers, but they're not necessarily like characters having conversations and talking about what their motivations are going through. You have to kind of divine that from the way the God's speaking to you, the way Ed was talking about. You get this weird vision and then you go, oh God, I think it means this. Depending on the God, that's true or that's not, right?
Because the other thing the gods are doing during this is testing mortals to be their followers. Who is truly loyal? Who's in it for themselves? Who's really good at getting not just the letter of what I tell them, but the spirit, so that they improvise in situations. They don't go, I don't know what to do, or run away. They go, I don't know what to do, but I think the God meant this, and then they do the right thing. And then God goes, okay, that guy I keep alive. And so there's a bit of that going on. Not overtly. We're not going to stop and tell you that, but you'll get the feeling as things are unfolding. There's going to be far more of that than there's going to be. And meanwhile, the God sat upstairs doing his nails and looking down. No.
And for me, philosophically speaking, I've always used the gods as interpretations from the characters. One of the scenes when Dritz found Myliki is he says he doesn't know that he found a god. All he found was a name for that which was already in his heart, right? And that's the way I've always approached the characters in my books. And there's a reason why, that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to write one of the War of the Spider Queen books, because it was out of my comfort zone. So I was happier being a consultant on the series and an editor on the series than writing the books about the gods themselves. It's just not something I've ever been comfortable with philosophically. I prefer to go through the eyes of people interpreting what they think are gods. In my Forgotten Realms, in my head, I don't know that there are any gods. I know there are a whole bunch of people who think they are and act certain ways because of them. And that's just, it feels better to me, personally.
So were any of the former Forgotten Realms authors, like Greenwood, like Grubb, or Cunningham, approached or offered or consulted with in terms of the writing?
That's a question we best not answer.
Troy.
Yeah, me.
Move on, James, move on. Quickly, quickly.
A lot of these novels seem to take place in the heartlands, and I guess the only part of the world that the big sphere is really in the southeast of the setting. So will we be seeing any of that through this story, or are we waiting to see that in the campaign setting? Even the two adventures, one takes place in Iceland Dale, and the other one takes place in Baldur's Gate. They're really not.
There is a tricky balancing act there, where on the one hand, the Heartlands are the most kind of classic Forgotten Realms, and that's what we wanted to emphasize and really put center stage. Troy ventures out from there somewhat to start to see some of the geographical effects of the Sundering. For the rest, you will have to wait for future products of some kind. Jeff?
Speaking of future products, with this exciting event going on, there's other stories that have sort of been put on pause. Is there a plan to give those authors the opportunity to sort of continue those stories?
We are not prepared to announce anything about that yet.
Oh, okay.
Wait a minute.
Given the level of excitement you all expressed about the summit and the whole collaborative process, is there any thoughts in the future of doing something similar again, maybe just a plot and having several authors sit together and come up with their own points of view on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
My house is big enough, they can all come over.
I think too, like the last.
Sundering 2, this time it's personal.
They have, Wizards has expressed great interest in continuing the summit process, just going forward for the flavor of the world, not so much to create another realm-shaking event, because this is the realm-shaking event to end all realm-shaking events, but just because the value of getting us all in the room, and it's not just the authors, you have to understand, it's not just the authors, it's the art team, it's the editors, it's the brand team, it's all the people, it's the people who are licensing realms out to the video game people or whatever. The collaborative process works better when you're actually collaborating. So yes, and I keep trying to get them to do it in February, because February in New England is awful, and if I have to go out to Seattle, it's a very short flight to Hawaii. So I keep saying, do it in February so I can bounce through on my way to Maui. February, James?
Didn't we do it in February last time when you had to leave early because of the blizzard in Boston?
Yes, Snowmageddon, and I couldn't get home for
Yeah,
another
that's
day
right.
extra. I spent an extra day.
But see, next time I'll plan just to go to Hawaii, so I'll stay longer, because it won't be snowing there.
I was going to say that last story summit, you know, a lot of it was kind of tightening up what we were doing with the Sundering and how the stories fit together, but then we were also talking about what the next books for these characters would be and what the next stories would be, and how, you know, those would influence each other or kind of reflect each other in a sort of a thematic way that maybe they could use in a sort of transmedia sense, where it's not a huge story, right? It's the next logical step for these characters, the next, you know, evolution of their journey, but how to make them keep feeling cohesive and all part of the same world. But yeah.
Right there.
I just want to say thanks. I mean, your infectious instinct, you know, excitement about this project is, you know, for those of us who were there in 87 and 88, you know, whether you're a gamer or a reader, you're just so excited to have that next new product no matter, you know, passing around your tattered version of the Crystal Shard with all your gaming buddies to get through the New England winters. It was, you know, you as infectious for us, we were excited to see this new stuff and this resetting at the table and your guys' excitement. I mean, I just hope, you know, one sliver of that carries over to us as readers, because I'm rejuvenated for 25 years. You know, it's good.
Yay!
Yes.
It feels like 1988 again. It feels like 1988 again. It really does.
Except our knees in there.
We won't talk about that part.
This is kind of off the subject, and
don't think that print is going away as fast as some, doomsayers say. There's still such a market for it, but I think that ebooks have a lot going for them. One thing I love about my e-reader is that I have this instant gratification. I want this book. Oh, I have this book, and now I can read it. But they're terrible for browsing. The way that we are culturally about books, we go, even if we're going to buy something off Amazon, if we're going to buy something for Kindle, we go into the bookstores and we look what they have. So I don't think it's gonna completely overtake. That said, there's a lot of positive aspects about it, and clearly that market share is getting bigger and bigger every year, and it provides a lot of opportunity for people in the U.S.
Yeah,
Not in Europe.
I work in the library, and I buy books all the time, both for the library and for me, and I pay attention to the world of publishing, and the people who are converts, who live in high-speed internet urban centers, particularly in the United States of America. Oh, ebooks are taking over. Look, growth rate's 4,000%. And then if you look at the real figures, that means we have 15% of the market. And elsewhere in the world, not so much. I love it when an ebook can augment the experience. When they do something electronically, the sound of the marketplace, the footnote, the explanation. What is that name? Push on it, boom, this is what the character is. Oh, it's that guy. So particularly if you're reading, let's say, Game of Thrones, and you're trying to keep in your mind the cast of thousands, if the ebook could augment that, that's cool, because that's adding something to the story. But if you're just going to reproduce the printed thing, I want the printed thing, because the printed thing left lying on the beach or on the seat on the bus or in the doctor's waiting room is what gets you your new readers. It can be passed down from a father to a son or a friend to a friend and say, look, this book is really cool, you should read this. You can't do that so easily with ebooks because everything's lost in the shouting crowd. There's no way to pick them out. Yes, you can put free samples up and excerpts and everything, but everybody's doing that. And most of us navigate through the internet like blind drunk drivers on a freeway we're not familiar with. Okay, so finding stuff a second time and deliberately as opposed to by accident can be a problem at times. I still want the look and feel, personally, of a book. I want to be able to pull out books that were written and published centuries before I was born and turn the pages and say, oh, my great-great-grandmother wrote in this, here in the margin. This was her book. I can never know her, but I can smell her perfume. And she loved this scene. Look how it falls open at this scene. And that adds something too. I don't want to lose that. I don't mean I'm a Luddite. Yes, I have ebooks and stuff, but I do not usually read on my ebook reader. However, if I was making a long trip on an airline, yes, I would want that rather than the 2 suitcases full of books.
I, on the other hand, am a Luddite. I don't have an ebook reader, and it's for 2 reasons. One, I just don't enjoy reading on a computerized screen that much, and I know that they're supposedly as good as paper now, but I don't think they are really. And the other thing is I just still enjoy the physical thing of holding the book in my hands, even when I'm on an airplane and I have to carry the damn thing on the plane. It's still worth it to me to do that.
And the plus side is they don't make you turn off the book when you're taking off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I can read through the stewardess telling me about how to buckle my seatbelt.
I believe that over the long haul, it's all going to be ebooks except for some kind of specialty items or collector's items, but not necessarily anytime real soon. But I think that in a generation or 2 at least, we're going to get there.
Yeah, not only do I agree, but I think we've only seen the very, very beginning of it. For example, now on the Audible books, some of them you can sync with the book you're reading, so that when you're listening to the book and then you go back to read the ebook, it picks up right where you stopped listening. So they sync them together. And then the other thing I see is a big change that's coming, and probably coming pretty fast, is that right now it's very hard to get books translated into other languages except for the bigger books, the bigger titles, because the cost is prohibitive for the number of sales you're going to get in the noise that is the marketplace. And what's going to happen when e-readers are going to have good translation programs on them? And they're going to, in the very near future, have very good translation programs.
Romans, they go the house.
You know, right now, if somebody in Australia, well, that's a bad example, but if somebody, even though they don't really speak English, but if somebody in Germany wants my book, right now, they can get it in English. So they can have it shipped and pay $25 probably shipping to get a hardcover book shipped over there. Or they can get out their e-reader and download it because it's available worldwide in e-format when it's released. And so I think you're going to see more and more. Look, 4 years ago, I tracked this stuff. I was an accountant. 4 years ago, 2% of my books were e-books. Then it went to 19%. Then it went to 40%. Now my backlist is about 65 to 70% e-books. That's the reality. When I started, you guys remember this. Mm-hmm. You don't, Erin, you're young. But you other guys remember this. Walden Books had 2,000 stores and 1,200 B. Daltons. They're all gone. There are people now who are 3 hours from a bookstore.
And that was another question, that's another thing I was bringing up. With all the bookstores being gone, I mean, are we gonna rely on the internet to get our hardback books? Is that where we're gonna have to get them from? Because I don't see any of the bookstores coming back.
I think independent bookstores are coming back. And I think that the game and hobby stores are doing pretty well again, which is really cool to see.
I do want to move on to another question because we're running out of time. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I wanted to add something to that. For in an aging population that we have in this country, and also people who are like me, I'm legally blind. I found it very difficult to find any science fiction or fantasy in large print. If I did, it was extremely expensive. With the advent of e-readers, you now have an audience who was not able to read your books. If they weren't recorded, they couldn't listen to them. You have those people who will be able to read ebooks because you can make the print you want. That's a good point. And I think that that's an addition to your audience, and it's a really great thing. It won't replace print books for people who want them, but it opened a world for me that I did not get to experience. Sure.
All right, a couple more questions. I'm going to check and make sure. Okay, go ahead.
Simple fact question. One of the joys of shared world fiction is that you get to read about all of these characters from all these different authors. Excluding characters you yourselves have written, who's your favorite character in Forgotten Realms that's somebody else?
No, don't ask.
No.
I used to edit Forgotten Realms.
That doesn't change.
That doesn't change.
No.
Chris, that's the, I have 4 children. Which one do you love the
Right,
most?
exactly.
That's what you're asking.
Eddie's choice.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to answer that question?
Not really.
No, not really.
Hard.
Now, if you say the question, what character would you like to see in this situation, regardless of who's writing them, probably in the hands of their creator, that would be a different thing. I would love to see.
What's the situation?
You would love to see.
I would love to see Drizzt happy, smiling, and joking.
No.
I know that, yeah.
Do you want every teenager who reads Drizzt and wears black to shut me down? No.
I'm not saying I want you to publish that. I would love to see it. That's my sort of personal thing. I would love to read that.
The only way Drizzt would be laughing and joking is if he was standing on the ashes of Elminster. We're right back to 1990. No, I'm absolutely only kidding, and Ed knows it. Yeah. No, I'm not. No. I have enjoyed many Forgotten Realms novels tremendously. And it would be, it's like when you're doing an interview for a newspaper and they say, well, who's your favorite writer? And you realize that as soon as you say one name, you're going to say another, and then another, and then another. And then when it comes out, you're going to realize, I forgot this person, this person, this person, this person, and they all know where I live. And there's no way, and the other thing is, it depends what kind of mood I'm in. You know, it depends on my mood. I mean, I don't think, especially in the realms.
Let me give the answer I gave to that question back in 1990. My favorite Realms character is that cool one I haven't met yet. Okay? Because it means there's going to be more new ones around the corner that we just haven't met yet.
Perfect.
That's, but you know.
Other questions? Yeah.
When you guys were in the summit, or when you guys were brainstorming, has anything that hit the floor that you decided to pick up and put on the back burner for yourself as an individual book?
Oh, I did. I absolutely did, and that's why I've got the next 4 books plotted out, pretty much. Although the plots will change as I write the books, because they always do, but a lot of that was, a lot of where I thought I wanted to go came from what I was hearing other people saying the realm would happen in different parts of the realms, and I went, I want to play there. I want to play there, so.
I'm working with characters that I wrote 2 books about, and in both cases I had to kind of push out the sequel I had intended to write. So I just was paying very careful attention to what happened in that particular area, and as soon as I had even the semblance of an idea, I jumped up and said, can I please do this? And here's my plan, and Ed, do you like this? And James, do you like this? And Nina, do you like this? So I have permission for that.
Your stage ain't gonna handle it.
And in a similar sense, you know, there's places, my characters are from Timanther originally, and obviously there are a lot of things about Timanther that are going to change very drastically, and I, you know, look at that and go, oh my gosh, this story is going to be so good, you know, for another book down the line. So yeah, those things would happen for other reasons, for necessities caused by other factors. And you kind of synthesize that with the ideas and the characters that you had kind of floating around before. You pick them up and they turn into neat little books, hopefully, when they're written.
So this is going to turn into one of those situations like Bob just described, but Erin just mentioned Nina, and Ed mentioned Fleetwood earlier before. I want to give a special nod of acknowledgement to Nina Hess and Fleetwood Robbins, who are the editors for all of these 6 books.
Yes.
Nina is editing Bob and Erin and Troy. Fleetwood is editing Ed and Richard and Paul. They're doing a great job. They have been an integral part of the whole summit process and reviewing outlines as a team. The other member of my team, Matt Cernett, has also been involved in that. He's kind of the Realms continuity person who's helping us keep everything.
Nina managed to hide. She's not in that video. If you watch that
She
video,
is. You can see her briefly
oh,
once.
okay, yeah, okay. You can see Fleetwood and Matt sitting beside us in one shot.
You can see Nina next to me one time.
Oh, yes,
I did spot her. But she's kind of got her hair half over her face.
Yeah.
But
She's
she's
one of
there.
those sneaky editors that kind of shows up in the middle of the night and smacks you upside the head.
Then escapes
She's
up
like,
the
I
bed.
love this, but did you notice this massive gaping plot thing that you could probably have done better? Why are you so good at spotting those?
Yeah, when I actually wrote, the first time I actually worked with Nina was with Gino, when Gino wrote The Stowaway. And I knew when her comments came in, because he had done most of the writing, and she just buried them, which was awesome, because every first book author needs to be buried.
Yes.
And just bloody. And Gino came to me and he was like, I said, want to see my notes? And he said, yeah, and they are identical to Nina's. And I was like, I love this woman. She's awesome. And she just, and then it just got so much better for both of them going through the rest of that series. Nina's tremendous. And Fleetwood is, I knew Fleetwood over the Del Rey days. I mean, Fleetwood came from Del Rey books. And yeah, for them, absolutely. Yeah.
Here in my grubby little paws, 2 copies of the companions, and I don't want to leave this room with them.
I'll take them.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
So as we were talking, I came up with 3 questions of things that were mentioned kind of in passing over the course of the panel. So if you will pay very close attention, you might remember them. Well, I have 3 questions, but I'm only going to ask So I'm going to need your help in spotting the first hand that goes up as I ask these questions. Number one.
I don't have my copies yet.
Okay, here's question number one. There is a noblewoman in Troy's book who believes she is chosen of...
I think
back here, right?
I thought the guy in the black got it first.
That was my look. But.
Black shirt?
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Yep. Gal with the black shirt.
Yes.
Don't put your hand up this time.
Okay, yeah.
You're out.
You're out. Okay.
Okay, the character who appears both in Erin's book and in Richard's book is named...
He had his hand right up.
Yeah.
Okay, so how picky do I want to be?
Pickier than that.
I think
No.
so.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, who
I
was
don't-
next? Does anybody know?
Go to the third question.
I thought there was next. Yeah.
What's the third question? We all want to know.
The third question I think was too easy. Richard's book has undead, pirates, and...
Flunks?
But do you have pirate red wizards who are undead?
Huh?
Do you have pirate red wizards who are undead?
I do have red wizards who are undead.
Are they pirates?
No, I have red wizards who are undead. I have pirates who are undead, and I have red wizards and pirates who are not undead.
Well, I think you should have a pirate red wizard who's undead, and you've created the ultimate character.
And if you do, he gets to name him.
All right.
I think we are, 5:58. So any last very brief words?
Read it. It's going to be good.
And I do have one.